Hey guys, welcome to the Learn Feng Shui podcast, where you'll learn Feng Shui from a classical point of view, taking out the myth and superstition. So, if you're interested in learning Feng Shui, Chinese astrology, all things Chinese metaphysics, as well as the superstitions and myths that connect it all, you'll enjoy learning Feng Shui with me. Hey guys, how are y'all doing today? I have this very special guest on, Christian Kyriacou, internationally known as the House Whisperer. He's an architect, philosopher, musician, and intuitive with a remarkable ability to read the energetic blueprint of both people and places. With decades of experience, Christian works at the intersection of design, sacred geometry, spatial energy, and consciousness. His work goes far beyond traditional architecture. He explores the hidden dimensions of a space, including ley lines, vortexes, and what he calls etheric gateways, which is what we'll be touching on today. Energetic portals, and this is believed to connect us to other worlds at higher states of awareness through his global teachings, presentations, including the most recent one at the International Feng Shui Summit, his meditative practices at sacred sites around the world. Christian helps people attune to the living intelligence of a place. Today, we'll be exploring some of these powerful locations, often found in temples, churches, monuments, and natural landscapes, and how these spaces may serve as thresholds between dimensions. I'm so excited. Welcome today.
Thank you for reminding me what I do. Lovely. Good to be here, Candice. Thank you.
Oh, I'm glad we finally connected. There was some some time differences. We
Yeah.
just couldn't seem to, and internet connections and whatnot. So I'm very glad to have you on today. So just kind of first off, well, you mentioned you were just in Sweden. Is that's correct? So were you doing work there? Was that just vacation time,
No, no.
time off?
My partner's got a cottage there. We've got a cottage there, and it's a 1 acre in the middle of a forest, and it's a haven. We've got well drinking water, and it's really soft. It does wonders for your skin and your hair and your health, and it's a trek to get there, 2 flights, but and a drive. Um, but it's incredibly peaceful. We have the odd deer going through the garden, and recently I got some video of a couple of mooses just wandering into the into the land. It's that kind of thing, and apparently there is a bear as well that wanders around, but we haven't seen him yet
In the
because they
future,
love
perhaps.
honey. You
Yeah.
put honey, you get the
They'll come for it, huh?
So I have taught in Sweden quite a bit last year and in the early 2000s in Stockholm and Gothenburg. Um, as yeah, I don't do so much traveling now teaching. Most of it's online because it's just a lot more practical. But it's great to travel and work. My longest trip was going to Hawaii to work on a project a few years ago.
Hmm.
And currently, the other biggest project I'm working on is a healing center on a Greek island
Hmm.
with a Greek chap who's a good friend, and he actually went through my academy training as well. And it's all being designed to all the principles I speak of, sacred geometry, geomancy, um, and it's near an ancient Greek site as well, the site we're working on. So it's exciting. It's taking time. It's been about 5, 6 years on the project, on and off, but he's buying more and more land plots, so the project's getting bigger and bigger, and really interesting. Yeah. So I was there a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, on the site, and there are lots of goats there, and
Oh,
lots of wind.
uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I love that sort of work. Yeah, 'cause it's really putting all the principles of feng shui, house whispering into practice, and it's going to be an incredible healing center.
I really think that's something that's kind of been lost over time. Again, we kind of talked a little bit before the intro, where we talked about the principles of geomancy and just, these different ideas, But I think it's something that's kind of been lost over time in modern, especially here in the US. I notice other countries, you're from, you live in the UK right now, but a lot of the buildings in the UK, they follow a lot of these principles, I suppose. And I really think it's something that's kind of been lost in the US.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. It kind of needs flagship projects.
Hmm.
And then people will look and say, yeah, we can follow that and do something similar. And then I'd be happy to sort of help on something else or guide or advise,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yes.
But it does need people to see, oh, it does work. And
Yeah.
if you create a room that is a geometric proportion of X times Y,
Hmm.
that heals certain diseases, especially ones with a capital C, which we're not
Yeah.
going to mention the name
That's
of because
interesting. Yeah.
in England, it's actually illegal to say you can cure
Hmm.
C.
Yes. The United States too. Yep.
1951, is it? Yeah.
Hmm.
Which is like, why not? Everyone else talks about it and they don't do it, and they've been,
Yeah.
give
That's
us
true.
your money, let's have coffee mornings, we're going to heal it. I've been hearing that since I was a kid.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
still haven't found a solution,
Yeah.
but people,
Exactly.
and they usually have to sort of go to Mexico and hide and all this sort of stuff. But
Yeah.
that's another topic, which,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's so many things that
you
need to, yeah. And even natural
know,
natural things. Yeah.
we know that, but this is ancient technology that we touched on earlier. Um, Geometry, proportion of spaces, and also the location on the land.
Hmm.
This comes with the geomancy, building on vortexes. Particular vortexes will heal and enhance energy, others will drain and
Yeah.
kill you, basically.
Yes.
Both are valid because we need energy, yin energy, to break down compost heaps, for example.
Hmm.
And as we know, ants, love geopathic stress,
Hmm.
very yin energy. It's not good or bad. Bees create their nests on that and things so on. So if you've got a bee's nest, a wasp nest in a house, you change the geopathic harmonic,
Hmm.
they go instantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I've heard
you
that.
don't have to, you don't
Hmm.
have to kill them.
Yes.
And I came across this years ago with ants going through people's, rooms and houses, change the geopathic, and they go wander somewhere else to find the geopathic.
Oh, I need that in my backyard. I have quite a bit of ants.
But this
Yeah.
is something I kind of came across in the late 90s, soon after I was introduced to Feng Shui in 95, that, these energy lines do attract um, particular animals, insects, but they have a right to be there because that's a natural energetic of the earth.
Yeah.
But if it's bothering us and our human life, then we just respectfully give them somewhere else to go,
Hmm. Yeah.
and just shift. But the it's not about my whole work is not about getting rid of, but understanding the harmonics and the dynamics of any energy.
Hmm.
Um, Fusing our soul energy into that frequency, that wavelength, becoming it temporarily, and moving myself to another part of the land.
Hmm.
So that geopathic is moved. And
Interesting.
this is how the ancients we used to do it.
Yeah.
So, we don't have to, the concept of getting rid of or space clearing to get rid of. If you try to get rid of something, you're taking away the opportunity for someone to understand why that issue is there in their life. So the
Interesting.
whole concept of space clearing is actually more space alignment, space purification, I would
Hmm.
call it. Space alignment, because
Okay.
what we are ultimately aligning to are the divine laws of the universe, the light codes.
Hmm.
And if I can, and we all hold those 100% totally, every single person, the human body, psyche, energetic body contains all that. So we don't have to go and learn anything or go to school or go to university. The teaching, and as I teach in my academy training, is to get people to remember,
Hmm.
to drop the veils, as we said, Plato talks about that. We come into this life, we've got the veils of non-remembering, and we have to work hard to remember why we're here or who we are. And astrology helps us with that, past life regression, perhaps.
So you mentioned light codes. That is something I wanted to discuss because explain exactly or if you can, exactly what are the light codes? That's an
Um,
interesting concept.
everything in the universe is vibration,
Hmm.
frequency.
Hmm. Yes.
Everything, absolutely everything. You know, atoms, neutrons, electrons, etc. And light and sound are light codes, so that they're usually represented in light and color, light and sound. So and they can, in a sense, it's like one vibration of unity. And then we get that splitting into two, duality, which everyone knows as yin and yang, night and day, good and bad, all this sort of thing. Um, but traditionally, energetically, it's always said to be 12 divisions, different aspects. So we can see that in say, things like sacred geometry and medicine. These are laws that govern those, but it's the same laws of harmony, but directed, channeled through a particular discipline. But it comes back to essentially the law of one, the law of harmony. And so, because we hold those codes within our being, all we have to do if we're going to somebody's house to do a feng shui house whispering consultation is actually to do nothing. And this is what I trained people for a year, actually to do nothing. And the nothingness is the training to be in the present moment, connected to source, um, and you connect to the Akashic field that contains all the knowledge of the universe, including what your client needs, what the house needs, what the land needs. And if you can stand there knowing your divinity, um, the space has to fall into alignment. And so it's the non-doing, but the being that allows the doing and the change to happen. And it will highlight what is out of sacredness for the client and in the client themselves, because it's an inner outer mirror image, of course, what's going on in someone's home. Um, and to help help the client actually see what is causing the issue, what programs are they running, what is their belief system? A lot of the time it's a lot around, oh, money. Oh, I've not got enough money flow. And my question is, well, what's your belief in money? Often I hear, oh, it's bad, it's evil. I thought, where'd you get that idea from? Oh,
Exactly.
my dad used to say that. It's really bad. You're going to be seen in a... And I'm thinking, well, that's not yours, but you're perpetuating that belief. But you can change that. I mean, I call that a programmed code. So, I do a kind of process that I teach of psychotherapeutic regression, but also quantum timeline shifting, where I take people back to the source of that belief and recode it, and then bring the person back to the present moment. And we can get a person between 1 and 10, 10 being the most horrendous, traumatic, intense level, 9 out of 10 a particular event. And every event that's traumatic keeps repeating. That's like the discipline of, repetition in psychology, psychotherapy.
Yeah.
We're going to keep repeating because we and our guides and angels and helpers are going to create our next moment to repeat what we haven't sorted.
Yeah.
And so we meet our future tomorrow, and we've got that choice. So someone might start off with a trauma intensity of 9 or 10, and after 10 minutes of doing this, it's down to 1 or 0.
Yeah.
It's that quick.
It's
You
amazing.
don't have to spend 7 years of therapy to get there. Every time I do this with someone, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I've come from a healing background,
Hmm.
um, because that woke up, probably when I was about 19 when I first met my partner, ex-wife, yeah, mother to my 3 children, who the oldest is 50 now. Um, that's sort of you can guess my age, but and she was in hospital, and suddenly I was just shown how to heal what she had.
Mm.
I thought, where did that come from? And I look back on it now. But even then, I thought, wow. And I could just put my hand over someone and it changed something.
Yeah.
And then I began to understand years and years on, and I would sort of walk, particularly late at night when I was tired. I would come back from philosophy classes that I spent 25 years in, learning Sanskrit, sacred geometry, sacred sound, the Vedic scriptures, and so on, and meditation. Um, and I would see my hand moving, and then I would see the echoes of my hand moving, which were energetic,
Mm.
sort of smoky trails. Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so that world of energy began to wake up. Um, and as we touched on a bit earlier before we were recording, when I was 12 years old, I suddenly thought I'm going to enroll in a psychology correspondence course. So I
Hmm.
started getting that through, and then I came across the Rosicrucian material. So I joined that and studied that for a few modules. And my parents, from a very humble Greek Cypriot um, background, very heart-based, very hardworking, but they encouraged everything. But I was kind of reluctant to tell them what I was doing, so
Hmm.
I'd have to hide under the bedclothes with a torch to
Yeah.
read these,
Hmm.
which is crazy now. I'm sure they wouldn't have minded, but because they got me and my brother, my older brother Tony, into music when I was 8 years old.
Hmm.
So that was again all part of the harmonic aspect. So that awareness that there was something much greater in the universe.
Oh no, it's perfect. I was actually going to ask how you kind of got started on this. So it sounds like it got started very young, but previously you also mentioned that you had past life memory.
Yeah, it's just sort of spasmodic. And in fact, they've increased since I started writing the book, which is about 5 or 6 years ago. Um, one of the memories, which is a description in the book of going back to the Roman Colosseum and fighting and dying there. And when I did go to the Colosseum in reality in 1973 or something, I felt so ill being there. It's like
Mm.
there was something. I don't think then I put it down to a past life, but when I look back now, I know I was there, I died, and I think I know why I died, but maybe I won't go into that here. And every time I look at any photos of it, and when I was writing that section in the book, because the two characters, which is kind of me and my partner in a way through different lifetimes, but it's in the book current. They're going back and forward through different time portals. That's all
Hmm.
part of the story with
Hmm.
different devices and experiencing. And one of them is suddenly being thrown back into the arena on the sawdust with blood everywhere and trying to sort of get out of it through the activating the golden orb, which opens up
Hmm.
into a time travel machine to get them out, and things like that. So even when I was writing that, I was really there. And some years ago, probably about 20 odd years, 25 years ago, I went to Delphi. I've been there a couple of times in Greece, which is kind of like the heart navel of the earth
Mm.
energetically. Um, and a massive surprise because I didn't know it existed, but I started to walk up the hill from the main area where the amphitheater is and the Temple of Apollo, where the Pythia would, give the oracle readings, and went to the top and discovered there was a racetrack with seating on one side.
Hmm.
And I thought that's interesting. And as I stepped over the threshold,
Hmm.
I was suddenly in ancient Greece. I'd stepped through 2,500 years. I
Hmm.
could see the people sitting there and all the activity. It wasn't a memory. I was there. I'd stepped through a time portal.
Mm. Hmm. So you
Again, I write
basically,
write about that in
mhm.
in detail, and I could feel it, smell it, um, and my message has always been the same with Atlantis, which is another memory, of talking to the elders about if you continue with the technology, you're going to destroy society, which of
Yeah.
course we know that happened
Yeah.
with Atlantis as well. Although Atlantis was an experiment that got shut down, I think 5 times, the last time being about
Hmm.
10,000 BC. And that's when, from there, the 12 tribes went out, to different parts of the earth.
Is
And
that the
again,
number
splitting
12?
it up,
Yeah.
the 12 tribes, the
Yeah.
12 tribes of it. And
Hmm.
and again, I quote a lot of that historically correct in the book. So much of history and cultures are divided into 12. Of course, we've got the zodiac, 12 zodiac.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a very common factor. The 12 is a very geometric, of course. Um, so in Delphi, I went to the elders who were sitting on this raised bit, and you can see that on mapping, aerial mapping, and tried to tell them, and I was chased away, of course,
Hmm. Yeah.
But again, I was like in one reality of a world to them looking like real but a ghost,
Yeah.
and they were seeing me like that, and so in and out of time realities. So this is all about parallel existences. It runs
Oh,
right
wow.
through the book. Um, but this is a reality of what everyone lives. But we think we're in the real world or the 3D world, but
Yeah.
we're actually running parallel lives at the same time. And I've experienced this in kind of dreams at night and dreams during the day, which are kind of the same thing, just different intensities.
Yeah.
Um, so so that's one aspect of the story. And then of course the Atlantis thing. Same thing, going up to the chamber, telling them about the technology. And we've got Plato with us. Oh, that's it. That's the fascinating part of the story, because when we go to meet Plato, which is the first chapter, and we're talking about philosophy and all sorts of things, and he talks about his dialogues, and there's jokes about, all these Greek philosophers, they've all got beards.
Yeah.
And in Iros, it's kind of me, I
Hmm.
don't. But being on Earth for a while, I start growing stubble and hairy chest,
Oh, yeah.
Uh, so the effect of Earth vibrations, which he ends up at the end of the book loving the Earth people,
Hmm.
despite all the because they've got heart, they've got that love,
Yeah.
which is a beautiful quality. So it's a question of, does he go back? Does she stay? Does he go back? And then they have a child at the end, and
Oh.
that child, Aqualine, is going to become the new Earth priestess to guide the
Hmm.
new era. So that's kind of the bigger picture, if you like. Um, but I won't say what happens in the books. I want people to
Yeah, don't
read
give too much
it.
away. We definitely want to. It sounds amazing.
But of course, the initial one, the biggest one that I've left out, is how this book started,
Yeah.
which was
Yes,
Past
tell
Life
me.
Memory.
Yes, we'd love to
Yeah,
hear.
well, it goes back to 1993,
Mhm.
and I think it was that year or the year before I'd gone to Egypt for the first time and only time this lifetime. And it was an extraordinary transformation because it was, if people haven't been to Egypt, for me, it was like no other country. I've been to
Hmm.
Hawaii, Tibet, China, lots of other European countries, but there's something so different about Egypt. It's like it's so easy to go into parallel realities,
Hmm.
other dimensions. Maybe it was just me that felt that, but I think it's very different from any other culture because it was the closest to what we have from Atlantis.
Mm-hmm. I could see that.
And perhaps
Yeah.
not many people know that, but in the Grand Canyon was an Egyptian area.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
there are
recently on a podcast where we kind of talked a little bit about that. I think there's so many different theories, and one of the theories, of course, is this interdimensional gateway. Do you have a theory on
Oh,
those, or have
oh,
you
there
heard
are
of
a
them?
lot of dimensional gateways
Mhm.
everywhere. I think I showed in my etheric gateways
Yes.
talk,
Yeah.
images of gateways, and
Everywhere.
I've
Yeah.
come across gateways, and you certainly don't want to muck around with them because you could disappear and not know how to come back.
That was one of my questions I was going to ask you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've got some mild ones here. I've got three in the house and one in the garden here.
Oh, wow.
And
Uh-huh.
some people come into my living room and they say, "What's that?" And it's a very specific spot.
Mm,
Um, and I've had downloads because I realized at one point I had the bed in that position and
mm.
I'd be sleeping on it.
Oh, yeah.
So that was
Gotcha.
interesting. Um, but yeah, gateways, portals, they exist everywhere. And even NASA, which I have no respect for because of
Yeah.
all the lies they tell,
Yeah.
they are now scientifically discovering wormholes in space between
Hmm.
the sun and Earth, and they can measure them, but they keep changing.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but for sure, there are caves in the Grand Canyon that are Egyptian, and people have been there and seen and documented Egyptian artifacts and very strange writings. But of course, it's all shut off by the military now,
Yeah.
as da da da. You can walk into the woods and find them.
Yeah.
Um, but to actually go through one, you need to be of a particular resonance to
Mm.
open the gateway.
Gotcha.
So for most people, you're going to be safe. Even if you walk into one, I don't think anything will happen.
Is there ways to recognize if you're near one of these gateways?
Um,
Mm.
I see them. I can look at space. I can look at a site and know there's a quality to it.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a knowing. And people say, "Can you train me to see that?" I say, "Well, I can train you to refine your energy field, and particularly with sacred geometry, because
Hmm.
once you get people to experience sacred geometry images,
Yeah. Yes.
it reminds them that they have that inside them anyway.
Yeah.
And so all you're doing is activating all the Merkaba fields
Hmm.
and the Platonic space frames, which
Yeah.
we are all made of.
Yeah.
Um, and when you refine that ability just to see and that I can I've got an open green in front of me. I've got Richmond Park, sort of towards the back.
Hmm.
But when I look in any open woodland or forest, I can just see sacred spots.
Hmm.
And in our land in Sweden, I just walk around and I'm drawn. And there's one particular spot that has got a very strong geopathic line. And when you walk to it, everything goes silent.
Hmm.
It is so silent, there is no movement in creation. That's the still point.
Hmm.
Nourishing, not something to douse and get rid of, which is like what
Yeah.
dowsers do. Oh, you've got a geopathic line under your bed, move the bed. Nonsense. That line is there because you've created it. It's part of your relationship to something.
Interesting.
So let it be a gift to understand why you've created that. I was working with one lady who was recommended by a holistic GP, so a real doctor, and the problem was she had the geopathic stress, she couldn't sleep, so he recommended move your bed. She
Hmm.
moved her bed to another room. A few weeks later, the geopathic came back. Move it
Mm.
to another room,
Shifted.
came
Yeah.
back. Hey,
Yeah.
you are the geopathic, you are the issue. So look at it, deal with the issue. Getting rid of, as I said earlier with space clearing, if we come into alignment with what the frequency is of something, and we don't judge good or bad, we are in alignment with it, therefore it can't harm us.
I gotcha.
We don't have to fix anything. We come
Yeah.
into alignment. That's my approach to everything. All the cures in Feng Shui is not to fix this or put a wind chime up or a crystal. All that's great. It creates energy, not knocking it. Well, in a way, I am. But it's not what sorts things. It's our alignment to them. If our intention of placing something brings us into alignment, then great. Use a crystal or a wind chime or a three-legged toad if it doesn't hit your
Yeah. Yeah.
foot as in the
No, I
uh,
agree. I rarely use feng shui items. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I call them
Adjusting the
gizmos.
environment. Yeah. I
Mm.
think one question I had for you is you talk about the etheric gateways, the sacred sites, but you also talk about everyday portals. And I think that's one thing we kind of didn't touch on is these doorways to our homes and them being, I suppose, portals into our world, maybe.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Our front door, we program it to allow people to come in, not come in, the flavor of it, what
Hmm.
we attract. Um, and most people do it subconsciously because in any doorway, we have to stop,
Hmm.
get a
Yeah.
key, go in. And so there is an attitude, there is an emotion that's left on the doorstep. Um, and it's what I encourage people to do when I'm teaching is just walk along the street,
Hmm.
like here, like rows and rows of houses,
Yeah.
and just look at the front door, read it, feel it.
Hmm.
Don't go past it though, because you don't have permission to do that.
Yeah.
It's got a story. Like I say on my website, every front door, behind every front door is a story of people's lives.
Yeah.
But you can read the essence of those lives from that front door because it holds the code, it holds the memory, it holds the emotion of
Hmm.
everyone who's been through that. And
Mm.
it will be stronger of the people who are living there currently. Um, but obviously there are lots of layers, as we know, in every property. Um, and when we look at the design of front doors, like if we look at, for example, going back to Chartres Cathedral or any cathedral that's got an ogive arch, that arched,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
that the geometry of that ogive arch is the golden mean harmonic, the golden mean spiral, which is the
Yeah.
harmonic part.
Mm.
So every time you're going through that doorway, it's reminding you to connect with your heart harmonic.
Mm.
That's how a
Interesting.
doorway is programmed through sacred geometry to realign you, bring you to that stillness before you enter the sacred
Mm.
space. But our homes are sacred spaces.
Yeah.
So we can
Yeah.
look at our door and consciously tell it what we want to do, give it a job to do, whether it's protecting or let the world's stuff fall away as I come through it and I'm
Hmm.
coming into my sanctuary. Because every home is a sanctuary.
Hmm.
And even when we look at geopathic lines, we can actually split those geopathic lines and divert them around the home.
Mm.
And this is what we do with stone circles or
Hmm.
cathedrals. You take those, and because they're all built on crossings of lines, yeah.
Mm.
So you become the line, and then you take the line into this around the building into the stone structure
Hmm.
or the house into the brickwork.
Yeah.
Um, and so that becomes the yang structure,
Mm.
allowing the inner space to be the feminine yin, which
Mm.
allows it to be still and sacred.
Awesome. That's amazing. That's amazing. And
So you're not trying to block. Let's
yeah.
block the energy. You're allowing it to feed the structure. So it's like the masculine holding,
Hmm.
allowing the feminine, and we're not necessarily talking about man and woman.
Yeah. But yin
Um,
and yang, or yeah,
yeah,
or yeah.
the yin and
Yeah. Yeah.
but what it does is it takes the energetic noise out of the
Mm.
inner sanctum
Mm.
and allows us to be still and fall into our own stillness, into that sacred place.
Yeah. I think one of my questions is, you talked about, these etheric gateways in people's homes and everything. How do the modern developments interfere with some of these, uh, I suppose not classic, but these very old energetic portals that were open, and we come and put modern developments on top of that.
Oh, it
What
just
happens? Yeah.
destroys things. Of course,
Yeah.
there's so many developments that people have no sensitivity to the land or
Yeah.
the spirit place.
Yeah.
If people go on my website, the under the architecture section, I've got nine. I describe nine areas of how we approach building.
Hmm.
Uh, First of all, is kind of the land and tuning into the land, respecting it.
Yeah.
And if you've got an open piece of land, we then look for all the energy lines. We look for the feng shui spot, where the best place to build something.
Hmm.
And then we orientate it to the best sort of compass positions, sun, moon, etc., etc. And then we design it using sacred geometry and feng shui principles.
Hmm.
But also before we cut into the land, um, there's a respect for the land,
Yeah.
asking permission of the land, the elementals, dig before we cut into the foundations and so on. So
Mhm.
I've gone through a whole thing, hoping that fellow architects might give it some, but I don't have much respect for architects, I have to say, even though,
Yeah.
trained
They
as one,
they'll
but,
definitely disregard some of those feng shui principles. And I know they could be quite difficult to work with. I've never worked on a development or even building a new home or anything like that. So I haven't had that experience yet. That's something I would
yeah,
love to do. But most people don't
yeah,
realize it starts with the selecting a
the
location
land.
and everything. Yeah, it starts with that. Yeah.
When we look at the Indian system of feng shui, Vastu Shastra, yeah,
Mhm.
it's so rich. I was actually introduced to that because I was in a philosophy school, I say, that studied a lot of the Vedic scriptures before feng shui. So in the early 90s, I was looking at, and I got documents on Vastu, which in a sense is way far more advanced, or I would say more authentic than a lot of the feng shui. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the same Bagua, but a different Bagua and a different approach.
Yes.
And so if you try to mix the two, it'll just do your head in because it's like trying to mix a compass with a black hat.
Yeah.
You can, and I do. I work both together. Um,
Yeah.
but that's not the answer to a solution for life anyway. You got to look at what does someone need and then look at all the parameters. So I don't start from a system. I'm going to use this system or that system. What does someone need? Where are they? What's the house? And so I approach it from that aspect. Vastu, yeah, that was fascinating. What I started to read was when you get a site, apart from putting up a gnome on a pole to see where the sun is and it's sort of rising, setting and that,
Yes.
um, they would dig like a 1 foot cube earth and take it out of the earth. So you got a hole, you created a hole.
Hmm.
And then you put that earth back.
Hmm.
And then the next morning you come back, and if it's risen, it's a good site. If it's
Mm.
sunk, it's not.
Oh, fascinating.
And
Yeah.
when I read that, I thought,
Yeah.
that makes so much sense. Because life force,
Yeah. The ancients,
um,
they really did go and look
oh,
at
it's there.
nature, look at the
It's all
soil,
documented. Yeah.
yeah, animal
And
patterns, yeah,
oh,
omens. Very
and,
interesting.
and
Yeah.
and of course, the other thing that people laugh at is they would taste the soil.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
imagine developers and architect going to a site now and tasting the soil.
Yeah.
Well, probably in London you wouldn't want to, but
Yeah. Yeah. Here in
um,
Texas, either our soil's very
just that
dusty.
concept. Yeah, this is a good, tasty bit of land to build on,
Yeah.
because if it's not nourishing to your taste, what's it going to do to your body when you live in it?
Yeah.
And
Oh.
then, of course, after that, when you start building, you build to sacred geometry and feng shui principles. And then what about the materials?
Hmm.
Are we using metal, which cuts us off from heaven and earth? So people who live in apartment blocks, you've got steel mesh and the reinforced concrete above and below you.
Yeah.
That's cutting you off. It's like a Faraday cage.
Mm. Hmm.
So that cuts your natural feeding chi off. There are ways, and I've developed a way of actually neutralizing metal by going into its molecular structure
Hmm.
and refining it. And I've tested that with concrete buildings, and people go in and feel a difference. And they think, "What have you done?"
Hmm. Hmm.
Incredible. So that aggravation, that thickness of concrete and steel
Hmm.
turned to putty.
Yeah.
And I was teaching in Amman in Jordan to a group of 15 architects. There was an architectural practice. I was invited there, and we spent a weekend. And I got them to go out and get two of the same, bit of concrete or brick
Hmm.
and bring it into the class. And we worked on one which felt heavy. They both felt heavy and concrete, but quite aggressive and
Hmm.
dense. And to actually do the energy work of processing one of them through the heart energy, through the golden mean,
Hmm.
bringing it the life force, and then blind testing the two pieces.
Hmm.
One felt soft and the other one felt heavy
Yeah.
physically.
Hmm. Yeah. So you can actually
Um,
change
it
the
changes. It
texture, I
changes.
suppose. Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
totally, but you can feel it. It's
Hmm.
not like you're imagining it,
Yeah.
but it's the same with space. And again, I recorded years and years ago a hallway, and it had some strange statues in it. But before and after the space clearing with incense and bells
Hmm.
and shakers, the sound was different and more refined afterwards. So you could
Hmm.
actually hear it on the recording. It was different.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
shouldn't it be? Because we've refined the space.
Yeah.
Into sacredness. So um, it's fascinating all this work.
It
I
is
mean,
fascinating.
I did talking about it.
Yeah, it is fascinating. I'm trying to think. You talked about the codes being embedded by like printing words and stuff like that on a building. Do you think that, I know the ancients, they all had almost a way of activating a space before they moved in. And so they would lay stuff in foundations, sacrifices. There was all kinds of things that were either
Ceremony.
laid or embedded into the
Yeah,
space.
yeah.
And that just fascinates me. That fascinates me.
Oh, yeah. That's all part of these 9 areas. You
Yeah.
can read about on my
Hmm.
architectural website. But
Hmm.
but yeah, the foundations and that ceremony and traditionally people would like kill an animal and its blood into the
Yeah.
foundation. And I'm thinking, why? You don't have to do that.
Yeah. Or wall
They,
people up. I've heard that too. They would wall a person into the basement.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Or the odd
Yeah.
priest here and there, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, break them up into a wall.
Hmm.
But these beliefs, abound, and
Yeah.
it's not what it's about.
Yeah.
It's about just that honoring
Yeah.
of the land, and ultimately, we're talking about when you're building foundations to actually program the
Hmm.
found, and this is another aspect of it which fascinates me because I've come across situations in New Jersey actually where the building was an office building. I've got to be careful I don't identify it.
Hmm.
It was an office building, but it was originally built for another purpose.
Hmm.
And that other purpose, when I looked at it, it was like a program coded machine in the foundations that was
Yeah.
running the purpose, the show of what the building was originally designed for.
Yeah.
So someone comes along, they sell the building, they create an office for whatever business it is,
Yeah.
and it's struggling in its identity.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
And so it's about going in, being able to read the code, which for me is like, what I do for breakfast,
Yeah.
and feel it, and read it, and then change it.
Yeah.
But it's about one I can talk about openly is one in Kingston, not far from me here, a building that the woman wanted to use it for a goddess center,
Hmm.
but it was struggling and it had lots of concrete development going on around it. But when I was there on the first floor, I was looking into the kitchen area, and I could just see people in Edwardian costume
Mm.
fiddling around, doing
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Um, and I told the client, and she said, "Oh, this floor in that room was being used for making medicines."
Mm.
So we're talking the Edwardian period, so what, 100
Yeah.
odd years ago, beginning of the
Yeah.
last century.
Hmm.
And they would sell the medicines on the ground floor.
Hmm.
And so it was actually one of the first pharmacies. It was actually one of the first buildings in Kingston to have electricity.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
Not that that's necessarily relevant, but
Interesting.
this activity was still going on because I could see it really clearly. So the building was struggling in changing use. So the whole concept of change of use of a building,
Hmm.
which every development does,
Yeah.
but who thinks to ask the building, do you want to
Yeah.
change?
Yeah. I
But
understand.
if you don't,
Hmm.
that building is going to struggle with its identity.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's very much a topic at the moment, isn't it? Male, female
Hmm.
identity stuff.
Yeah.
Interestingly, um, so I did a process of taking it from current time then down through the timeline year by year, and every year I was going through, I could see different animals and different scenarios, like going through a theatre play, right back to its inception point, because every building has an inception point, its
Right.
birth.
Yes.
Like we were talking about before, we've got a piece of land, we're gonna, um, and so the inception point is in the mind of the patron, the
Hmm.
person who's going to want it,
Yeah.
the owner, if you like. And then they get so that inception point. It's like a seed point in Sanskrit, we call that spota. It contains the code of what's going to become. So that code is then handed over to a designer or an architect, who then creates the design, and then you've got the building process. But at that inception point is the purpose of the building. And that then runs right through to its completion and its activation and its ceremony and its opening ceremony. And
Yeah.
yeah, we've now got a pharmacy built there. So went right back and said, what was your or what is your purpose
Hmm.
as a building? To serve the community of Kingston through medicine.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I then asked it, well, serving the community of Kingston, how about it being through being a goddess center?
Hmm.
So it didn't take away its purpose,
Yeah. Still
but it
healing.
shifted it.
Hmm.
And there was a kind of acquiescence. Fine,
Yeah.
great. And then like took it back up the timeline to the present time at that time I did it. Um, all sorted.
Yeah.
The building had no issue with its identity. Its change of use was
Hmm.
by agreement with
Yeah.
its soul. You can't force a building to be a different function without
Hmm.
creating havoc and
Yeah.
disharmony. So a lot of buildings that have issues and problems, and we go in and try to fix them with feng shui,
Yeah.
we've got to get to the core seed point,
Hmm.
way beyond the foundation, the
Hmm.
inception point. So I think if anyone listening working with feng shui, always try to get to the inception point,
Hmm.
connect with the soul of the building, what its purpose is, and is it happy? Or
Hmm.
does something need to change?
Yeah.
And we need to go back there, feel it, feel the love, feel the heart, um, do the transformation, and you do it with the client, by the way. Yeah, crucial. It's not me going around doing, changing buildings. You got to take the client through every step because it's their karmic connection. And
Yeah. Or I mean, I would assume this would extend into homes also. And so looking at history of previous tenants and stuff like that, I know our home, it ended in a divorce for the people that previously lived here. And
yeah,
I mean, that's one of the reasons I discovered feng shui is because me and my husband
yeah,
were
yeah, sure.
having a lot of marital problems. And when
Yeah,
I
yeah.
started learning about feng shui, I thought, oh my goodness, that is probably the energy we moved into. Yeah. And
Program,
we're still
program,
together.
program.
So yeah.
Yeah,
So you're
coding,
returning.
program
Yeah.
coding.
Yeah.
It's in the walls. It's in yeah, I had that same thing when we
Yeah.
moved from London, World's End Chelsea to Kingston about
Hmm.
40 years ago. Within months, divorce
Yeah.
proceedings.
Yeah.
And then discovered, probably nearly 9 years later when I discovered Feng Shui,
Yeah.
the relationship area in the Black Hat Bagua, the top
Hmm.
right, broken down greenhouse.
Mm. Hmm.
I
Yeah.
thought, okay. We then built an extension there, but that didn't make any difference because the pattern was in the house, in the land. And we discovered that the previous people divorced.
Hmm.
And after we sold the house, the new people who bought it then divorced.
Yeah.
And so that pattern, that code
Hmm.
needs to be resolved. But it's not the broken down greenhouse, in my case, that caused the divorce.
Yeah.
We are attracted to it in order to exacerbate the relationship to
Yeah.
enable it to divorce.
Yeah. I
So,
believe that too. I think mine and my husband's was to maybe heal our relationship because we're, like I said, we're still married. And so, but I
yeah,
do notice the length of time we've lived here 12 years, and that's a full cycle of the zodiac.
yeah,
And so I
yeah,
was telling him the other day, I think that was or, a
Well, that's
pattern of
lovely. It
the
kind of
feng shui.
held back together, but
Yeah.
but for most people, it goes one way and gets really nasty.
Yeah.
But as it did in my case, unfortunately.
It happens.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that predecessor energy,
Hmm.
it's a
Hmm.
code, and
Yeah.
you cannot feng shui that out. You've got
Yeah.
to get right back to the core,
Yeah.
um, and resolve the
Hmm.
first instance that that happened, and that can go back hundreds of years.
Yeah. Well, our
And
house is
connect.
a new build, thank goodness. But yes, I can imagine in a building that's very old. It's very old,
Yeah,
back through decades or maybe centuries of
but even with a new building,
yeah.
as we know, depending on where it's built,
Mm-hmm.
what was on that land before, and what the energy lines, the ley lines, the vortexes
Yeah.
connect to. So as we know, if upstream from a geopathic line is a hospital, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
get all that sickness coming through your house,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so on. So yeah, so neutralizing these patterns. But again, it's not about let's get rid of those patterns. It's
Mm.
about understanding why we were drawn there
Yeah.
or why the house called us there. I got
Mm.
quite a odd story about that with there was one client who wanted me to douse how much to bid for a house to buy it. And I hate that sort of question because you can get it so wrong, think, oh. Anyway,
Yeah.
I got it wrong, I thought. I told her a price. So she pitched that price in. She didn't get it. Within a week later, she got it, even though it wasn't the highest bid.
Mm-hmm.
But when you douse, you ask for the highest and best for everyone and everything, taking everything into account. Yeah, that kind of preempts the dowsing question.
Yeah.
And what transpired was the man who had lived there, separated from his wife, he was really depressed and he committed suicide.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And he was desperate to find a woman to live with him, to
Mm.
love him. So
Mm.
he called my client.
Mm.
He made sure
Yeah.
she was the one who bought the house.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to the house after she moved in, or she bought it, she hadn't moved in, but we went to do the house whispering feng shui on it and clear the energy because it felt something wasn't right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I realized the full story, of course, not before then.
Mm-hmm.
So the dowsing was right,
Mm.
but not what I'd hoped initially because I thought I got it wrong, but in fact
Yeah.
didn't. Um, and so I could sense the place in the kitchen where he committed suicide, and you could
Mm-hmm.
really feel it, and I just sort of see it and um, but the extraordinary thing was, and she was happy for me to video the whole consultation. And it was like three of us there, the guy who committed suicide, the client and me, and he was part of all the conversations. And he didn't hold back from telling her what he wanted from her in a relationship if she
Mm-hmm.
moved in, at every single sort of level, as if he was alive and
Yeah.
getting into a sort of physical, intimate relationship. That's what he
Mm.
wanted.
Yeah.
And she could feel his energy.
Yeah.
How can I put it?
Yeah.
But very,
We've heard the stories before.
yeah. It was,
Yeah.
but like listening to this and feeling it and seeing him and videoing it live, it was like, and
Mm.
I've never done anything with that video because it's probably a bit too intimate,
Yeah.
um, but it was fascinating. But it was so we understood why she was able to win the bid.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm.
it's time for you to go now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we helped him release, of course, which
Mm-hmm.
I believe one should.
Yeah.
Some people like to keep ghosts as company.
Yeah.
I come across that, and I've got someone now who is living with a ghost, and she's got a name for her. And I say, it's your choice. That's
Yeah.
fine. But I'm not there to sort of clear every spirit. I mean, I've nothing else to do otherwise. But I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. They're probably all
it,
around. Yeah.
it's what's your story? What do you need? If you need a relationship, and I come across a lot of consultations where people are happy to be in a relationship with a spirit in another dimension.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's fine. It's not for me to say you shouldn't do that, but
Hmm.
um, this was a there's a limitation as to the sort of the physical intimacy, but
Yeah.
another story.
Yeah.
I prefer a real
I've heard those
person.
stories before. Yeah.
I'm sure. Never a dull day with this work. It's
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds fascinating. It's taken it to another level. I think in my own feng shui practice, uh, I think kind of how you were saying earlier, there's definitely things you can improve in a house, but a lot of times I do tell the people, it might just be the year, it might just be a season, maybe,
yes, yeah, yeah,
business can be bad. We can have bad years, things can happen, Um, but kind of going back to maybe even like patterns, I look a lot at the Batsa. I do the Eastern astrology,
yeah.
and those four pillars, and you can definitely see those patterns in there.
Oh
And that
yeah,
self
yeah,
awareness
yeah.
really just of
Absolutely.
understanding what you're creating in your life can do
Yeah.
amazing things to help break that.
I mean, very
Yeah.
simply looking at the nine-star key astrology, it's
Hmm.
very simple for people to learn and understand, and seeing
Hmm.
those patterns of, number one, new beginnings,
Hmm. Hmm.
sowing new
Hmm.
seeds and that whole thing. And we're going to have lows and highs.
Yeah.
And then when you're in a high, it's like harness that, get on with it, make the best of it,
Yeah.
because the following year things are going to be a bit sort of fallow.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can't ignore. Although, what I teach in the nine-star key is something totally not traditional,
Hmm.
and I've not come across it in any of the other books or teaching. Is if you've forgotten to make the best of a particular year because you didn't know about it, because I'm just telling you about it, you can go back in quantum time and make those changes in that reality
Mm.
and feed that back into your current time, and it will change your life because as if you did do it, but
Hmm.
you didn't know about doing
Yeah.
it.
Interesting.
Uh, so I do a nine
Yeah.
key quantum. Maybe I should do a whole workshop on it actually. But
Yeah.
so we do have more control. Yes, we've got the stars and the planets and the influences and the moons but I think we are way above that if we choose to, and we can within reason influence it quite a lot.
Yeah.
So I don't hold with astrology. So some people say, "Oh, I can't do a session until in this phase of the moon." I'm thinking,
Yeah. Just
"All
do
right,
it. Yeah.
darling, whatever,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
fine. I'll wait till
I
you're happy."
I was asked if I scheduled stuff. I do date selection and stuff like that. And there's a point where it can control your life to the point where you
Yeah,
wait for
yeah,
certain days and certain things. And I don't agree
yeah,
with that. Just do, like
mm,
we scheduled our
mm,
meeting today. I didn't look at the date. I mean, you just have
yeah,
to know that the
yeah,
universe will align to
yeah.
make things happen for
But
you
it's
sometimes.
it's like we know it in something like many astrologers, certainly in the nine key, you don't travel in this direction on this date.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not life. If you got to do it, you got to
Yeah.
travel, you got to go on business.
Yeah.
The understanding is if you do, it's going to have this influence.
Maybe you'll have some
And,
bumps or
and if
something.
it's
Hmm.
yeah, and if it's a bit bumpy or rough, do something to change it,
Yeah.
make you feel better.
Yeah.
But as you say, don't let it run your life.
Yes.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're slipping into the mechanical rut
Yeah.
of fate, which don't believe in.
Yeah.
We have control. So I think learning astrology of whatever sort is valuable to understand the mechanism, but not to be run by it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. You
take,
don't
take
want it to
control of the car. Take
dictate every
control.
part of your life. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, I
yeah.
agree.
But yeah, of course, it's like buying and selling houses. I mean, I love that when people say, "Oh, can you help me sell a house?" And the fastest I have ever sold a house is 1 hour from the hip.
Mm,
Um, but sometimes, it's the next day or the next week. Sometimes it's not for months because there's something about timing that's not right.
yeah. Yeah.
And for the new person who's going to move in, it's not the right timing for them. So it does come into it, but um, yeah.
Yeah. I
Hmm.
agree. I know when me and my husband were having a lot of relationship issues, we really did. We decided to divorce. We even filed for divorce. As a matter of fact, we put our house in the market, but our house never sold. It never sold.
Oh,
And so here we are still. Yeah, here we
One
are
didn't
still.
want
Yeah.
it to happen. Yeah,
Yeah, it wasn't
absolutely.
time. It wasn't time.
So
Thank you.
the book, yes, it's available. Just go on my website. There's a link on my front page. Check it out. Email me if you want a signed copy. I can post it worldwide.
Yes,
Um,
for sure. It looks
it's,
amazing. And just everything we've heard about it, it just seems like it mirrors your experience so much. Almost like you're the culmination of your work.
it is
Yeah,
actually,
yes.
and
And
it's
it's
yeah.
called the VESICAN for those listening
The,
on the audio. And it's a multi-dimensional project. It features a book, music, and you're working on creating a series. That's
the
amazing.
movie series,
Yeah, a
absolutely.
movie series.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the next challenge. Yeah. So,
Wow. Okay. Yes. I didn't know
and,
you
and
had a House Whisperer book. I'll have to check all that out. I'll go through
oh,
the
oh
website.
gosh, the
Yeah.
house is before
Yeah.
that.
Didn't know you had that one. Hmm.
Oh yes, that is the
Oh,
Bible.
that's beautiful. Hmm.
Incredibly thorough. My editor did an amazing job of tabulating my.
That sounds like
Bible.
a must read for a feng shui enthusiast.
That's available on Amazon, so you can pick it up very easily. Next day, anywhere in the world. And the House Whisperer you can download as a Kindle read as well if
Oh, okay.
you like.
Awesome. Well,
I
thank you.
prefer a real.
Yeah, I like real books too because I like to. I mean, you can see my feng shui books here. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like to, you know, I like to be able to go through and reference and all kinds of stuff and
yeah,
make
sure.
notes and that's
Yeah,
just me.
yeah.
I'm a researcher. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad we got to finally connect and no Wi-Fi issues. I didn't realize you were out of the country when you or your original country when you
Yeah, no worries.
scheduled it. So we could have waiting till today was just perfect.
I try to pretend I'm always around
Yeah,
somewhere, but
yeah.
and and um and yeah, I found I can do this on the screen. Oh yes, here we go. Yeah, it's working. There we
Oh,
go.
okay, okay. I didn't know that you could do that. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
But I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, lovely. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.